First, you could be forgiven for saying this is just another day in Dan Andrews' Victoria. Only this time, even by the state's own corrupt standards, it's extraordinary. Yesterday, the astonishing confirmation of Daniel Andrews' secret COVID polling during Victoria's record-breaking lockdowns. And today, that letter published in full by the Herald Sun from outgoing Victorian Anti-Corruption Commissioner, former Judge Robert Redlich, accusing a Labor-dominated parliamentary committee of trying to dig up dirt and discredit the watchdog. As Redlich wrote today, IBAC has been concerned for some time, but partisan politics has intruded into the workings of the Parliamentary and Oversight Committee. IBAC's experience with the committee, particularly in the last 12 months, evidences a lack of fairness, partisanship and leaking of information to the media. It's extraordinary. Joining me now, Victorian Opposition Leader John Pesutto. I use that word extraordinary, astonishing, damning. You've got a legal background. Impress upon people watching this tonight. I've seen scandal after scandal come out of this state. Why this is so significant?
Because now we have the integrity watchdog, the head of the integrity watchdog, who was in that position until late last year, Peter, has come out and said, this government's corrupt. That's effectively what he's alleging. And the reason I say that is that he's pointing to efforts by Andrews government MPs to levy an independent auditor to actually induce breaches of secrecy provisions so that they could dig the dirt up on IBAC. So the head of our integrity system, if you like, the IBAC commissioner who was in that role, is basically accusing the Andrews Labor government of corruption. Now, I understand all of our viewers, all Victorians, are really exhausted. Just this week, this is the third major corruption scandal this week. What were the other two? Danny Pearson, a minister who sits around the cabinet table profiting off decisions his cabinet's making. Then we had Kudos, the polling firm that was there to give Daniel Andrews advice during COVID on what jackets he should wear, I guess. It was $2 million of taxpayers' money sent down the toilet so he could get good advice on how to handle COVID. Just a blatant misuse of taxpayers' money. So I get that everybody's exhausted. But what I want to assure everybody watching, and Victorians more generally, is that as the new opposition leader, we're not going to let this go. Enough's enough.
I made that point at the top of the show, you probably didn't see it, but I saw more fight in the dog today in the Parliament from the Liberals than I have in years. Are you determined to be different than your predecessors?
Yes, essentially, in the sense that I've got a vision of Victoria that is one where integrity, ethics, principles matter. You can't govern well. You just can't govern well unless you're guided by those principles. That's why I'm a Liberal. I believe in prudent management of taxpayer resources, living up to the principles people expect: honesty, transparency, scrutiny, being part of an executive, a premier, a cabinet that's accountable to the Parliament and ultimately to the people.
Just back on IBAC, he was Redlich, appointed by Daniel Andrews for a 5-year term. The only way I can read this letter, the only inference you can draw, and I don't even think you need to draw an inference, I think it's pretty explicit, is that after there were a series of IBAC investigations, we know around 5 pertained to the Andrews government and or the Premier, once that came to light, once that was known in the public domain heading into an election, clearly there was an attempt to use this committee as some sort of payback against the Commissioner and the anti-corruption body. How do you see it?
That way. This is an oversight committee of the Parliament. It's there to make sure that IBAC is operating as intended. But that's not what Daniel Andrews wanted his government members on that committee to do. He wanted them to go and dig up the dirt, to trash IBAC's reputation, to potentially commit criminal acts. That's how serious this is.
So help people understand. Here you've got not only a former Supreme Court judge, he was a Court of Appeal judge,
a seasoned jurist,
who gets this position, who makes allegations like this, huge allegations. You got a Premier in New South Wales who resigns over a bottle of wine. How is this tolerated in Victoria, and what can you do about it?
We need a longer discussion on this. Part of the problem is that Daniel Andrews has politicised Victoria's public service. That's the first thing. And the second thing, I think people have, I guess, greeted a lot of these scandals now with a sense of resignation, if you like, that you just, what are we going to do about it? And all I can promise is that I will make sure that we hold them to account and that people are made responsible for this. This is serious wrongdoing. And the broader point I'd make, Peter, is that Victoria's reputation is being trashed.
We're a laughingstock.
We are.
Across the border.
And
we're a laughingstock.
The worst thing for me, though, is this, Peter, and it's not always easy to translate this. Corruption matters to everyone. If a government is misusing taxpayer dollars, if a government is acting dishonestly, whether it's Danny Pearson, whether it's the use of kudos, or whether it's this, the latest revelations, it means that a government is focused more on itself and lining the pockets of its mates than actually delivering health, education, child protection, justice services that we depend on. And so you look at this and you think, we've got to make sure the people understand the connection between wrongdoing and corruption in the Andrews Labor government and what it means for them.
I've got to go to other issues just quickly. CBD injecting room, second injecting room for Melbourne. Would you back it or not?
No, we don't think one is necessary, a second one, and we've had objections with the first one in terms of its location and also the model. And in very simple terms for our viewers, the difference between the Andrews Labor government and our model is that there's a sense in the Andrews model that they kind of accept the cycle of dependency. And what we want to do as Liberals and Nationals is actually break the cycle, actually have policies.
Get people off drugs.
That's right. This just perpetuates it.
Right.
And so my approach is let's break that cycle.
John Pesutto, thank you. All strength in your arm.
Thank
As
you,
I said,
Pete.
I'm seeing a bit of fight in the dog and I like that.
Thanks.